I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, proud partners with the Pigskin Podcast Network. You can find them at PigskinPodNet on Twitter, or you can search the hashtag TPPN. We are also always live on the Campus to Canton YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the channel, and please review and rate on your favorite podcast app, as that really helps us. We appreciate all of the love and support that you guys give us. Matt and myself are here on this magnificent Monday. We are going to recap everything from the NFL draft. If you guys listened to the show Friday, we reacted to what happened in round one, which was a crazy round one, and that really kind of continued into Friday night. If you guys were watching us live, we had a pretty decent sized group watching us for most of Friday night. Matt, myself, Mike Valerie, and Jared Palmgren, two other guys with the Campus to Canton website. Debbie Lee, one of the Debbie guys, and Mike and our CFF lead and Jared kind of sat around for, I think, over 4 hours and talked about everything that happened in rounds 2 and 3. If you weren't able to watch that, we're going to kind of recap all of that here, at least me and Matt will, given our thoughts. Matt, I'm just speaking for myself. I am glad that the draft is over. It feels like as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft, you get to see a lot of crazy narratives and everything. Everything is done. Granted, there's a lot of crazy narratives now based on the way the draft went, but it's a big week coming up, and I'm excited for it. So I'm excited to get past the draft, but kind of like, what were your thoughts over the weekend before we jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of it was a crazy weekend. It was nice to have football and to be thinking about that. You almost immediately jump into rookie draft season. I don't know if you've started any. I've definitely started a few, and it's been crazy to see where some people are going. You know, it was probably the craziest off season we've ever had. It was one of the craziest drafts I can ever have, and so far I have 3 that have started. It's been some of the craziest rookie draft season ever. Yeah, I just values, where I'm at and where other people are. I don't know if it's going to settle into something. It's been amazing to see.
I feel like there's going to be only consensus, and then today I saw multiple people saying it's not consensus, is Breece Hall at 1 in everything. Super flex, single QB. I don't care if it's like tight end times 10 premium. Running backs get no points. I feel like Breece Hall should be the consensus 1-1. But I've seen a lot of people on Twitter kick back against that as well. So, yeah, it's going to be an insane draft. Before we get into that, though, there was news that came out today that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be suspended for 6 games. He violated the substance abuse policy, I believe is what it was.
Yeah, PEDs.
So he will be out for we'll be out 6 games. I don't think you can even appeal that. It's 6 games straight, correct?
Yep. So, and he dropped his appeal, so he would be eligible for the Cardinals' 7th game.
So, I mean, adding Hollywood definitely seems like a great thing even more now, giving them a vertical stretch wide receiver. Does this do anything for you, Hopkins value? I mean, redraft leagues, it definitely makes it difficult. Dynasty, I don't really think you take much away.
Dynasty, I'd already kind of dropped him. He was in the back half of wide receiver 2 for me. I think we've seen a little bit of a decline. Arizona is not Houston. They have other weapons, and I think we had seen him starting to shift down a little bit. So that 6 games alone wouldn't drop him down for me, but it may for the people that are still clinging to that DeAndre Hopkins as a top 5 wide receiver. I just don't think he was that before, and certainly shouldn't be right now.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got to get dropped down again because you're not going to have him for at least 7 games in Dynasty. Redraft him, be very curious to see what happens with him. I think he's got to tumble pretty far knowing you're going to miss out on him most of the season. So let's get into the landscape here for the rookies. And we're going to start at quarterback because let's just be honest, going into this, none of us thought that the quarterbacks were going to go the way that they did. I at least thought, we talked a little bit about this on Friday's show, I thought for sure at least 2 quarterbacks were going to go in the first round. We saw one, that was Kenny Pickett, who goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 120. Ritter was the second quarterback off the board, but that did not happen until the 3rd round. He goes off the pick at 310. Willis to Atlanta. Willis 324 to Tennessee. Matt Corral, the Panthers trade up to the 330 spot to get him. Then Sam Howell falls all the way to the 5th round and goes to the Washington Commanders, a spot that we all thought he might go to just 4 rounds later than expected. And then last but not least, Carson Strong, an undrafted free agent, to the...
Oh, that was the Eagles, sorry.
To the Eagles. And then Bailey Zappi as well, I believe, went in the
4th. He was
round
actually ended up being the 5th quarterback.
England Patriots for good God knows what reason. So,
do you know they took I think they took another quarterback later too, which
I wouldn't be surprised. Bill Belichick is raising a lot of questions with his drafting ability here recently.
Yeah, they signed De'Aaron King.
That's right. Yeah, as an undrafted free agent. All right, so in Superflex leagues, I think this has to change rankings some. So going in, I'll give you mine. We did talk about this in a rookie episode. Going in, my rankings were Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Desmond Ritter, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Carson Strong. Those were my top 6. I'm going to be honest. Bailey Zappi, kind of an afterthought. I don't think he's ever has a chance to be a starter. In Superflex, I think Kenny Pickett has to move up to QB1 because he was drafted in the 1st round, and I know me and you both do not think that he is that good, but he has 1st-round draft capital, and that matters. I do think there's a shot that he sees time right away, although I do think there's a shot for 3 of these quarterbacks to play right away. So I think Kenny Pickett, though, has got to move up. He's the only guy, at least in Superflex drafts, I am willing to take in the 1st round, but I would not be willing to take him until about 1-7. That's kind of where I feel safe taking him. There's easily 6 players over him I'd rather have. What are your overall thoughts on the quarterback class after watching the draft play out?
Yeah, it was really rough. I know Matt Corral was the 4th quarterback taken, but I actually like his situation better. I still think there's a decent chance that Trubisky is a bridge and ends up starting for a little while there in Pittsburgh. So I still actually have Corral, number 1. He would still be the 1st quarterback I would take in Superflex. But honestly, he and Kenny Pickett are the only 2 I would consider in the 1st round. And this is even Superflex. And I'm like you, there are 7 players I would take before I would take a quarterback. And then in that last 5, it's 2 quarterbacks and 3 more wide receivers, depending on how you feel, unless you're desperate at running back. And then maybe I'd take James Cook at the end of the 1st round. But, you know, Desmond Ritter, Malik Willis, maybe I'm thinking the end of the 2nd round, probably more like the 3rd round. Sam Howell, Bailey Zappi, Carson Strong, they're, end of the 3rd round or into the 4th round. Those are just, if you have a practice squad, those are like your practice squad's stashes.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's just Pickett. And if someone wants to take one of the other quarterbacks in the 1st round, I'm willing to let them have them. The one thing I will say is I actually think the more and more I look at this class, I'm willing to take a shot on one of those guys early 2nd, possibly back end of the 1st, depending on how players fall. There's really only 6 guys that I really want in this draft class. There's some very interesting landing spots for some of the later guys, and we'll obviously get into those at wide receiver and running back. But the thing with quarterbacks is we know they have immense amount of value in Superflex leagues. And when you look at a guy like Desmond Ritter or Malik Willis, like we assume, at least right now, Malik Willis is going to be the guy next year. Ryan Tannehill is going to have the biggest cap hit of any quarterback next year. They can get out from underneath it. I think they will likely will. So you are projecting Malik Willis to be the future. I don't know that Marcus Mariota is that much better than Ritter. So if Ritter plays well and is able to beat him out for that job, I do think that you'll be able to move Ritter for more than what you ended up paying for him. If you're able to get him as like the 2-1 or 2-2 in your rookie drafts, we saw Sam Darnold getting moved in Superflex drafts for first-round picks prior to last year. So if Desmond Ritter gets the starting job or wins the starting job, you'll be able to move him for a first-round pick, in my opinion, at which point you're getting more than what you paid for him. So I'm willing to take a shot on some of those guys. I like Matt Corral's landing spot. My biggest fear with Corral is that I don't like McAdoo, number one, as an offensive play caller. I don't like anything going on with Carolina outside of their weapons. I mean, I think the drafting of Icky was really good. He's going to help solidify that offensive line. But I don't trust, my God, his name is now, I can't think of
Christian
what his name
McCaffrey.
is. No, the
Matt
head
Rule.
coach. Yeah, Matt Rule. I don't trust Matt Rule. I don't know that he'll even be there much longer. Again, I just mentioned I don't trust Ben McAdoo. And my biggest knock against Matt Corral coming out of college was he ran a very heavy RPO system. It's a brand new offense in Carolina that I don't know is going to be RPO heavy. So granted, while Sam Darnold is learning a new offense, so is Matt Corral, but Darnold at least has NFL starting experience. I've seen a lot of people saying they think Corral beats out Darnold. I actually don't know that that's the case. I would not be surprised if Corral starts at some point in time, but I think the fact that he has been in the NFL for a couple years, I think Darnold does have a step up on Corral because Corral was a little bit limited in the offenses he called and played in college. So regardless, I'd be willing to take those guys. Probably earliest 112, would not feel great about it, but I would take one of them. And I think I would go early second round on some of the guys again, because if Malik Willis, if they let go of Ryan Tannehill next year, Malik Willis is a starter in Tennessee, his value is going to shoot up before he even really takes a snap. You can move him for more than what you just paid for. You're going to be able to get more than a second. Same thing with Desmond Ritter. We've seen Marcus Mariota has been decent in small amounts with the Raiders. If he goes out there and is really bad again, because that one thing is, Arthur Smith had Marcus Mariota in Tennessee, and then they passed him over for Ryan Tannehill. And everybody keeps comparing Desmond Ritter to Ryan Tannehill. If Ritter goes out there and plays really well in the rookie camp and preseason, I would not be surprised if he ends up getting that job eventually. I don't know if he ends up getting the job right off the bat, but gets that job. And again, you'll be able to get more for him later. So for me, Pickett's the only one I feel comfortable taking, as we both just said, probably around the 1-7 range. And a lot of that is just the team around him, too. Like, he's got incredible wide receivers, one of the best pass-catching running backs in the game, and I think a very solid coach group behind him, and Mike Tomlin, who is one of the best coaches in the NFL. So I'm with you on Carson Strong. I'm not taking him. I saw some people saying he's better than Jalen Hurts. I'm sorry. I mean, he's a better passer, but I don't know that he's going to challenge. I don't know that he's challenging Jalen Hurts for anything this year. So I would not be willing to take him anytime before the fourth round in a rookie draft.
Well, they'd also have to jump him over. They still have Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, he's not exactly got the clearest path going. And I think if they thought he was potential at all, they would have taken him somewhere in the draft. We had 9 quarterbacks go in the draft. We had Chris Oladokun. Oladokun. I don't know. I looked at that and I'm like, really, this is getting interesting. Brock Purdy, Skylar Thompson, Bailey Zappi. I mean, those guys all got actually drafted, and Carson Strong didn't. Our interest in these 6 quarterbacks seems to have been vastly higher than any of the NFL teams' interest in them.
Yeah, and it's I don't even know what to say. I mean, I really don't. I mean, we did talk about it beforehand that this was not a great quarterback class, and I think we talked a little bit about it on Friday's show. I think a lot of it was we talked ourselves into it because we typically see the NFL reach on quarterbacks, and I'll be very curious to see if this trend continues because we've seen quarterbacks fall. They did not believe in Justin Fields last year, and he fell. He fell much farther than any of us expected him to. Saw the same thing happen this year. Next year, there's only 2 quarterbacks that I really think have a shot of being even decent quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And that's Alabama's Bryce Young and Ohio State's CJ Stroud. Anybody else who rises up, I would not be surprised if they fall into later first, or maybe we see those guys fall or further and further into the second and third round like we did this year, just because it doesn't seem like the NFL teams, we keep talking about how they should value that 5th-year option. It doesn't seem like NFL teams do anymore. We've seen them moving on from these quarterbacks before the 5th-year option more often than not here of lately. Like, I wonder if, and it cost a lot. Like Baker Mayfield's on the Browns books for $18 million. Like we say that's a cheap contract. It's really not, especially for a quarterback that you don't think is going to be good. So I think this could be the start of a trend moving forward that maybe we're not going to see 4 or 5 quarterbacks going in the first round anymore, because these teams are starting to realize, like, hey, if these guys aren't that good, we'll just take them later. They're going to be cheaper. And if we don't like them, we can just get out from underneath them and don't have to worry about stressing over a 5th-year option. And if they're going to be good, we pay them before that 4th year hits and we keep them together. So it's going to be interesting.
Franchise tag him, like what happened with Dak. I mean, I think you've seen too, even these quarterbacks that have the 5th-year option, most of them are agitating that they're going to hold out or they want to leave their team if they haven't gotten a new contract at the end of their 3rd year going into the 4th year. I mean, that's where these contracts have been hitting. So if that's where it's going to be for a big-time quarterback anyway, you're right. Why not just take him in the 2nd or 3rd round and get an even bigger discount, especially since we've seen – well, the Rams obviously had a high-priced veteran quarterback and won the Super Bowl, but we saw a lot of teams there in the last decade that have had quarterbacks on affordable contracts go in and win. Even, Patrick Mahomes, when the Chiefs won, he was still on his rookie deal. Russell Wilson, when they won, he was on his rookie deal. Sometimes that's an easier way to finance a team at the beginning.
Yeah, I honestly, I was thinking a lot about that the other day, and let's just, I'll ask you, because I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like, how many quarterbacks do you think are elite in the NFL? And for me, it's like off the top of my head, I'm thinking 4, maybe 5. Like Patrick Mahomes jumps up there, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, like Lamar. Is Lamar there? Like, I think he's close.
I don't know if you can call a guy elite if you have questions about something. And we, no matter what Lamar has been able to do, and he's been impressive, he's good, he's a star, we still have not seen him maximize his passing. And if you have that kind of a question, how at a position where you're a passer can you be considered elite? And I think that's, Joe Burrow, we've seen him do it for 1 season. So I would say he's tracking there. We've seen flashes from Dak Prescott, but we haven't seen big success. I mean, I think it's even, I would even question whether we would put Herbert in the superstar and not in the elite. Well, that's, you have a lot riding on that.
That is true.
But I mean,
well, Rodgers, we forgot Rodgers. So that gives you
Aaron.
4. If we don't put Herbert in the
we forgot Tom Brady.
And Tom's probably only around for 1 more year, but he definitely deserves to be in there. And then what? Like, I'm just going to put Herbert in there because that puts us at 6 right now.
Yeah.
And so then, like, what is it? It's like Joe Burrow right there with Lamar too. Like, I think he's elite. So even if you put in there, that's 7 of 32 teams. Why would teams not continue to just cycle in rookie quarterbacks and keep them on cheap deals so that you can continue to build teams around them because of what you just mentioned? Unless you have one of those upper tier elite guys, to me, it makes more sense to just, okay, fine. We'll just keep cycling them until we get one of those guys. So I really think this may be a trend moving forward. It'll be fun to watch. Before we move on to the running backs, we got to talk Sam Howell really quick because we both liked him. He was up the top of both of our list. I thought maybe when he went in the 5th round, because I've been out on Carson Wentz for about 1.5 years now, that I was like, okay, that's actually a decent landing spot. He's played with De'Ami Brown. In my opinion, he's at least coming out of college right there with what I thought Carson Wentz was as a prospect. You haven't seen Wentz really be able to put it together, but then the coaching staff came out. Maybe this is just lip service, but they did come out and say that he's not challenging Wentz at all. We believe in Wentz. Wentz is our guy. We think Wentz can take us to a Super Bowl. Any shot you think Sam Howell's the future here, or do you think he's strictly a backup here and moving forward?
I mean, maybe after this year, but I think he's 3rd on the depth chart. in 2022. Taylor Heineke has shown him, we don't think that he's got the stuff to be a franchise quarterback, which is why they moved on. But he's been very durable in starting games and doing. I'm not thinking Howell surpasses him. You also have to think about that coaching staff. Ron Rivera and Scott Turner. They don't seem like the kind of guys that are going to be too eager to break in a rookie. I think that's why they're happy with the veterans. I think Sam Howell's a development guy right now. I don't think it was a terrible landing spot. He's somebody I'm grabbing and stashing. I think he does end up making the team, whether it's there or on a practice squad, but I think he ends up as QB3 there.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that, because he went in the 5th round too, that I would imagine he's probably not going until maybe the 3rd round of rookie drafts. And I'm with you there. I think because of the talent, I would be willing on and betting on taking him there. Because again, there's really not many guys that I love in this draft class. Moving on to the running backs, Breece Hall goes in the 2nd round to the Jets, as does Kenneth Walker goes in the 2nd round, but he goes to Seattle. Those were the two with Isaiah Spiller, who considered the top guys in the draft class. Of course, Isaiah Spiller does not go until, was it round 4?
Yeah.
But I do think he fell to a very intriguing landing spot with the Chargers. How do you kind of group those three now? Is it really just Walker and Hall in a tier of their own?
Yeah, for me, Walker and Hall and Walker in a tier of their own. They're in those top 7 picks. And then running back has kind of a soft garbage middle for me. We talked about quarterback's not a great position. I'm going to tell you, running back's not a great position. Neither is tight end. Wide receiver is top heavy, and then there's some question marks even as you get to the bottom of the 12. This is going to be a draft where you hope to hit on a few prospects. To me, you hope somebody hits, and that's very much how I feel about running back. There were a lot of people that jumped on the James Cook train because he went there at the end of the 2nd, goes to Buffalo, and there's possibly some opportunity. My first rookie draft, he went at 104. That's too high for me. I'd be looking at him, maybe 112, probably early 2nd round, and that's how I feel about Dameon Pierce, who went to Houston, where he's competing against Marlon Mack, Royce Freeman, and Rex Burkhead. I think there's a chance, but if Isaiah Spiller went there, I'd probably be much higher on it. Spiller goes to the Chargers. You're right. I thought that was not a bad landing spot, but he's kind of in that group because Austin Eckler's there. They're also a very pass-heavy team. We have not seen a lot of running backs succeed. You don't know what the split is going to be. I've seen people even questioning whether we should all be 100% in on Breece Hall being the 101. I liked his talent. I don't think it was a bad landing spot, but people have rightly pointed out Michael Carter is still there. And I've seen actual Jets writers, people who spent a long time saying that he's one of the better players on the roster and he is going to be involved. Well, that then sort of gives me a moment of pause. If I'm wasting the wrong way, if I'm using 101, I'm expecting to get somebody I can plug into my lineup. And I saw even some of the more experienced guys talking about, well, Breece Hall's probably going to get at least 15 to 18 touches a game. Okay, that's not terrible, but that's a little bit of a flip from like Najee Harris last year, where I was in Superflex League and needed a quarterback, but I took Najee Harris anyway because that's who he was.
Yeah, I've seen all the stuff on Breece, and my big thing with that is I just think he's better than Michael Carter at everything. And I know Michael Carter was there, and I kind of brought this up, I think, on the show Friday when we were getting ready to wrap up, me, Mike, and Jared. And I've talked a little bit about it on Twitter, and I talked about it with Ray Garvin as well. I just think it's because everybody has fallen in love with Michael Carter because he was this 4th-round pick. We weren't sure what to do with him, and then he hit, right? Like, he was very good last year. And I'm not trying to say that he's not a good running back and he's going to disappear, because he's not. I clearly think it's going to be Breece Hall and Michael Carter together in that backfield, because none of those other guys are good. But Breece Hall is just a better rusher and a better receiver than Michael Carter. I think he's going to get at least 70% of that workload. Michael Carter is not going to go away, though. My biggest fear with Breece is actually going to be, now that they've added all of these weapons, how much are they going to throw to the running back? Because at the end of the day, that's what gets these guys more points. The rushing is great. The touchdowns are great. But if they're getting some work in the receiving game, That's what boosts those guys up to running back ones. That's why Najee Harris was so deadly last year. There were games we only had like 30, 40 yards rushing, but he had 80, 90 yards receiving on 7, 8 catches and a receiving touchdown. That's what boosted him up. That's my biggest fear with Hall. But that being said, I think if you're a running back needy team, you've got to take him because he is the only one, in my opinion, that has that ceiling. Kenneth Walker, I loved him coming in. He was my RB2. But I think at this point, he's got to beat Nick Chubb and the NFL level because he's not that great of a receiver. And if you go look at what Seattle's done when it comes to passing to their running backs, DJ Dallas led the team last year with 23 catches over the entire season. That's 2 catches a game. Like, if Kenneth Walker's not getting that, you're averaging like 1 to 2 catches a game. And then you have Rashad Penny, who did not look bad at the end of the year and is coming back. Like, I think it's Breece Hall and then everybody else. If for me, it's Breece Hall and a tier of his own, and then everybody else comes after him. Like, I don't even have Kenneth Walker up there.
The thing that scares me a little bit about Walker, too, is my assumption was where they took him in the draft means that Chris Carson's not coming back, that is injured. But I would actually like somebody to say that.
Yeah, I don't think they will, just because I think Pete clearly loves Chris. Like, that, those two have had a good relationship, and I don't blame him for that. But I think where they took him in the draft is probably an indicator that Carson's not coming back, at least anytime soon. But yeah, for me, Kenneth Walker, it falls into the top of tier 2 for me. The reason I like Spiller, and I wouldn't put him up there with Walker, is we know that Austin Eckler has come out and said he don't want to carry the ball 200, 300 times. He wants someone else in there. Spiller's a very good pass blocker, and he is a very good receiver as well. I think he, in my opinion, probably jumps to the RB2. Now, his ceiling is going to be 100% capped as long as Austin Eckler is healthy. He's, in my opinion, I don't even think probably produces RB3 numbers for you unless he's getting touchdowns, just because Eckler is who he is. But I do like
still might be the 3rd or 4th best running back in the class. Yeah. That's the rule. You were hopeful about Zamir White, maybe next year when Josh Jacobs is gone. But, I mean, we've seen the Patriots rotation. Rashad White, all he did was kill Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, pretty much, unfortunately. Yeah, so the running backs that were taken after them, James Cook went in the 2nd round to the Bills, and then we had, we already talked about Isaiah Spiller. Zamir White, as you just mentioned, went to the Raiders. Dameon Pierce goes to the Houston Texans, decent landing spot. Rashad White goes to the Buccaneers, which I do think is a decent landing spot. And Brian Robinson Jr., we brought up a couple of those guys went in round 4, but Brian Robinson Jr. was in the 3rd round to, the Commanders, and
just crushing.
Probably the surprise of all surprises, Tyrion Davis-Price goes to the 49ers as well in round 3. Let's start with him, because I don't remember if you were on at that point in time with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike and myself both, we do film grades for all this stuff. Neither one of us finished grading Price out because he was already so low. I did not have him that high. I had him below James Cook. But he goes in the 3rd round to the San Francisco 49ers. I posted on Twitter, and I still believe it. I just think this is Trey Sermon all over again. I think people are going to buy into the hype. They're going to take him early. He's just going to disappoint. But if you want to look on the positive side, I know it's only been one season, but Elijah Mitchell was banged up all year long. He's a smaller back. If Tyrion Davis-Price comes in there and outperforms Trey Sermon, which probably isn't crazy to say at this point with how bad Sermon was last year, he could be Mitchell's backup because those now are the only 3rd running backs on the roster. He could be Mitchell's backup, but if Mitchell gets hurt, we could.
I thought Jeff Wilson was there.
I think he got let go. I'll double check, but I think
I'll
he got
look
let
right
go.
now.
But if Mitchell gets hurt, there's a shot that Tyrion Davis-Price is the guy for the 49ers in a scheme and a run offense that we want the running back in. So what are your thoughts on TDP?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have him still incredibly high. I moved him up because of the draft and the situation. I have him kind of at 9 here, but honestly, after Hall and Walker, I feel like Cook probably slots in at number 3 because of where he was drafted and because of the potential with Devin Singletary being in a contract year and Zach Moss never showing us anything. After that, there's a huge group from 4 to 12 for me that it really just depends on how things shake out. Like I have Tyler Algier at 11. Sure, he went in the 5th round to Atlanta. They just released Mike Davis. They have 27 running backs, but you have an opportunity. Spiller, if Eckler gets injured, there's an opportunity. Brian Robinson, I loved him coming into the draft. Now I'm worried about what does this mean for Antonio Gibson? What does this mean for J.D. McKissick? What does this mean for Brian Robinson? It's not a clear path to touches, but, I liked the talent. Zamir White, Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs are both in contract years now because they didn't up Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. Drake's in the 2nd year of a 2-year deal. Does he suddenly kind of walk into a great role next year? Are you looking ahead? Rashad White, it seemed like an indictment on Keyshawn Vaughn. You don't know what's going on. So that's kind of where Tyrion Davis Price, I think we've seen before. You can't totally ignore it. I agree with you. We shouldn't jump the gun. Trey Sermon should have been a lesson, but you can't totally ignore any running back on the 49ers roster. Nobody thought much of Raheem Mostert a couple of years ago, and all you needed was a chance. Jeff Wilson and JaMychal Hasty are both still on that roster, along with Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, he's just a guy that I'm willing to pass on. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I know Eric Froton over at NBC Edge was talking him up before the draft, as was Ray Garvin. Those guys are extremely smart in what they do. So I could be 100% wrong. But you know what? I was wrong on Mitchell, and I survived that perfectly fine last year. And I'm fine doing that again this year. He's just a guy that I'm not sure I would bet on. I do like the landing spot for Rashad White, Leonard Fournette, I don't know how much longer he has there. I'm with you. I think that really just spells the end for Vaughn, who is likely not going to last there. You mentioned Tyler Algier, who lands with Atlanta. They let go of Mike Davis. I'm very curious to see where he ends up going in rookie drafts. He's a guy that rated out very highly for me. In my grading model, he came in as RB6. And with that landing spot and chance to be the guy, I actually think I'd be willing to take a chance on him early second. A couple other guys that I liked. I liked Kevin Harris. I hated seeing him be like the 13th running back drafted to New England in this draft because, my goodness.
I know he didn't even get the draft capital of Pierre Strong Jr. I don't know what to do with those guys, honestly.
Nothing. I'm avoiding every single one of them.
So if you're talking about sneaky late ones that I think are worth considering late in drafts, I actually didn't mind the Kyron Williams spot going 5th round to the Rams. Henderson is in his contract year. Sony Michel is not on the roster right now. So I think there's potential, maybe not in 2022, as we've seen that the Rams are loath to give even high draft capital running backs a big chunk of the offense in the first year. The other one I thought was interesting is Keontae Ingram. He went in the 6th round, sure, but behind James Conner, the Cardinals have questions. They have Eno Benjamin, Jonathan Ward, and Jalen Samuels. So those are guys you probably can get at the tail end of drafts that I was like, it's worth a flyer to me.
Yeah, I loved Kyron Williams going to the Rams. We know that the Rams are very meticulous about who they pick in drafts. The fact that they wanted Kyron, and I'm pretty sure they traded up and then took Kyron Williams, who's an incredible pass blocker, really good receiving back. You look at everything he did on film, and if you don't want to trust me, that's fine. Go Ray Garvin, who played college football. Garrett Price and Jared Wackler over at Dynasty are both who played college football. All three of those guys I know had him ranked as their RB4 in their film grades, as did I. He was magnificent on film. I think he's going to be an absolute steal. I love the landing spot for him. You mentioned Keontae Ingram. I'm with you there. He came out as one of my lowest graded running backs, but I do think it's a great landing spot there behind James Conner. And there's one other guy for me who came in ranked very highly for me. He was RB8. I know Garrett Price liked him a lot as well, but I don't know where Garrett had him ranked. Did not get drafted, but signed with the New Orleans Saints as a free agent, Abram Smith. He could very easily be the Mark Ingram to Alvin Kamara. Mark Ingram, 1 year left on his contract. Abram Smith, younger, faster, stronger. I think he is a guy that we know Dennis Allen and those guys want to continue running the same offense. They kept the guy that was training under Sean Payton. Abram Smith is a guy that I guarantee you is not going into like the 4th round of rookie drafts. 100% of 100 drafts I'm in, I will take him. I think that he should have been drafted easily in the 4th or 5th round. He goes undrafted. He's a kid that I think is going to be the next James Robinson. Like, I'm all in on Abram Smith, and it's a great landing spot as well. Like, with him going to the Saints, I was just really kind of in on what where he went and what he couldn't bring to that team. So,
well, and I think so. The big thing you need to focus on if you still have all your picks is once you hit the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, go with your gut and take guys that you think have upside. Maybe not in 2022, but beyond. So, like, that's where taxi squads are really going to come into play. I'm glad I play in a lot of leagues that have taxi squads or guys I know I'm going to stash, because I don't think there are a lot of guaranteed 2022 reps anywhere in this draft beyond like the top 6 or 7 players. Even ones, we'll get to some of the wide receivers. I like the landing spots. I'm hyped about it, but I think we also have to learn our lessons from the past about getting too hyped about some of these teams that have prolific offenses, just taking a guy in the 2nd round and giving him 100 targets. It's not happening.
Yeah, one other running back, he didn't grade out super high for me. He came in as RB11, but I know a lot of other people really liked him. That is Dameon Pierce out of Florida, who did land with the Texans. You mentioned it is a loaded backfield right now, but I mean, he's got a chance to
not
get
good
the
loaded.
opportunity. Yeah, it's not a good loaded.
They have a lot of
Jags.
people.
There's a lot of Jags there. Pierce does have a shot to take that, but I think a lot of people are going to recognize that and talk about that. So he's probably going to go early 2nd due to how bad running back is. But if he at all falls at some point, he is a guy that I'd be willing to take a bet on. I just wanted to give you guys, like Matt mentioned, some lower end guys like a Keontae Ingram, who people probably aren't looking at. And again, for me, Abram Smith, he's a guy that I would 100% take a bet on. All right. So since we have to, let's talk about the tight ends.
Yeah, we're going to save the best for last, like waiting to have dessert at the end, which is wide receiver. But tight end, ooh, brother.
All right, so the tight ends here, I don't know where my show sheet just went.
So so top tight end taken ended up being Trey McBride, went the middle of the 2nd round to the Cardinals, who have Zach Ertz and Max Williams still on the roster. 3rd round tight ends, Jelani Woods went to the Colts, Greg Dulcich went to the Broncos, Jeremy Ruckert went to the Jets, and then we had a whole ton start going in the 4th round, the first of which was Daniel Bellinger, who went to the Giants. So those 5 are probably the biggest. I mean, there was 95 tight ends taken.
Yeah, Baltimore took like 70 of them. It was
Baltimore ridiculous. Did not take a single wide receiver, and they took like 4 tight ends.
Reminds me of the year that they did the who did they take? It was Hayden Hurst, Mark Andrews, and somebody else. And of course, Andrews ended up being the best out of all of them. But
oh man, you're right. There was another.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was.
It was like a big Nordic-looking white guy.
Yeah. But anyways, that doesn't matter. That's beyond the scope of what we need to talk about. So we were having a little discussion pre-show, and I didn't really think about it, but you brought up the fact Trey McBride was, for the most part, everybody's tight end one coming into the draft. But you moved Greg Dulcich over him due to what happened in the draft. Why?
So I think it comes down to a little bit of opportunity. Greg Dulcich was my tight end 2 going in. And I think he was tight end 2. He was in that like next group for a lot of guys. 3rd round is decently high capital. It was the 2nd pick that the Broncos actually had in that draft. I like Alberto, but he was a 4th round pick, and he's had some injury issues. I don't think it's a lock that he just unquestionably has it. Denver hasn't done anything else behind him, and there have been a lot of people here agitating that they needed to address tight end. And I think Dulcich, coming out of that Chip Kelly system in UCLA, had a decent college career. I think he could be in line for some receptions. You also got to look at Russell Wilson. In the past, he's used tight ends in his work in Seattle. They have the offensive coordinator who was there in Green Bay, where Robert Tonyan was a guy that they have continued to use quite a bit, working some of those tight ends in. So I think there is some value at the tight end spot, and I think he has a more clear shot at targets. Trey McBride, I still like the talent, but you have Zach Ertz and Max Williams in his own position group. Now, maybe they move on from Max Williams, but he's still there right now. They actually have 8 tight ends on their roster, including Trey McBride, which is a question mark. D-Hop misses 6 games, but he still exists. They still have James Conner, who caught 47 passes out of the backfield. They have Rondale Moore, who's going to traffic in kind of those small spaces. AJ Green, Hollywood Brown. There are a lot of things, and you're talking about a quarterback in Kyler Murray who's never thrown for 4,000 yards in this kind of offensive system. We think of them as this big, high-volume passing offense, but that isn't exactly borne out by the numbers. It can take tight ends a little while to get going. They did spend a decently high pick on McBride. I'm not out on him. I just think it's possible he doesn't have the best shot at touches now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. The problem is, I think because he was the first tight end off the board, he was the first tight end for many people coming into the draft, you're going to have to take him at an uncomfortable spot in your draft. And if you do, you have to know that he, as Dennis just mentioned, won't be a factor until 2023. And that's what I was about to say. Like, I don't see any way, like, because they also just signed Hurts to a multi-year contract. So at best, I think at best you're hoping he's the guy in 2023. Like, they're still going to have Hollywood, D-Hop. Like, you're going to have to play the waiting game. You're not getting, like, I could have seen him having a Mark Andrews type role had he gone to an offense that allowed him to do that. It's not going to happen for a couple years. So if you want a tight end that could produce right away, I do think that Dulcich is probably the guy, because we've also seen that those tight ends be very effective in Nathaniel Hackett's offenses as well, who's also going to be there. The head coach of the Broncos now helping call the plays. So I don't have an issue with that. I don't really look and grade tight ends because they're just so hard to project.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be fine taking either one of those guys. For me, it would be more just who's the better value. The one guy that I am going to end up on all my is Jeremy Ruckert. And I talked about him before the draft. We were worried about him because he did no testing. I've talked about it before, though. He barely got any touches. Ohio State just doesn't use a tight end in the receiving game. And if you go look at the few times they did, he's making phenomenal catches. He's a very good offensive tight end. And the Jets took him early. It was a 4th-round pick, I believe. Early
3rd-round pick.
Third-round pick for a tight end. I am all in on Ruckert. I know that they've got
so that's the thing. They signed Uzoma and Conklin to 3-year deals for decent money. They've invested almost $40 million in tight end. You also have Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Braxton Berrios, and you have Michael Carter and Breece Hall. I like Ruckert's talent. I didn't think it was a bad landing, or I didn't. I thought it was a good move by the Jets. I don't know how quickly that pays off for fantasy. I still have him top 5, but that's my concern. Like with him and McBride, if they would have gone to different, like if Jeremy Ruckert went to the Giants, I'd be all about it, because the only reason I'm interested in Daniel Bellinger right now is because the only thing in front of him at tight end is Jordan Akins and Ricky Seals-Jones.
I'm not worried about the guys ahead of him. We talked a little bit about it on the show Friday. Like, look, I get it. CJ Uzoma's had like 3 really good games in his career. Good for him. I'm not worried about him. Jack Conklin, we've been waiting for Conklin to be a thing for years in Minnesota. It never happened. I don't think it's happening here. I get that they put money into those, but a lot of things, and we talked a little bit about this on the Friday show, and I know you weren't there, it's just toward the end. When we were bringing up other guys that were landing in crowded rooms, the problem is free agency comes before the draft. These teams don't want to be reaching for positions in the draft, so they're going to pay guys in free agency. I don't care about that. The best players are going to play, in my opinion. No offense to Braxton Berrios, because I know he was really good at the end. He's nothing to me. He doesn't matter. He's not going to do anything.
Dennis
Corey
just
Davis
tuned out.
is practically done, in my opinion. So you're talking about Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore are the keys to that offense at BYU. Rex, I don't remember his last name, but I know his first name was Rex. I think it was Isaac Rex. I take that back. Rex was his last name. Isaac Rex was one of Zach Wilson's favorite targets. He loved targeting the tight end in college. I believe that maybe he's a little bit more like Trey McBride in the fact that he's not a big factor until 2023, but Jeremy Ruckert is the tight end I want on the Jets roster, and I do think that he can be a guy that will be used frequently moving forward, because those defenses are going to key in on Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson.
But before we completely drop off tight end, so I would not even look to take McBride or Dulcich until probably the top of the 3rd round. Is that where tight end, third, fourth, fifth round for you?
Yes, and that's exactly why I think like I'm going to end up with a lot of Jeremy Ruckert, because I think Trey McBride's going to go early second, and I think
He
Dolchich
went at
goes well.
105 in my first rookie draft
Yeah,
last night.
so
I looked at that. I was like, bro,
that's
not even tight end premium.
I have no doubt that those two guys, because of what they were like, the reason I think you're going to be able to get Ruckert later, even though he wins the third round in tight ends, because nobody cares about him because he didn't test, he did nothing. People think that he's not going to be good. And I do believe in his offensive skill set. So he's a guy that I'm willing to take, because I would almost bet he falls to the third round. I'll take him in the third round because, again, I really think like after you get past 203, I'm not thrilled about anybody in this draft anymore. And so I'm fine taking him in the third round. Let's jump into wide receiver, though, here to wrap up the show. Definitely the strength of this class. If you need wide receiver, grab them this year, because next year I think the running back is going to be the big thing. There's easily 5 and probably close to 8 altogether running backs you could get next year that could be difference makers. Wide receivers are the ones this year. We saw Drake London was the first off the board. Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, and Jahan Dotson all went in the first round. I'm pretty sure that's all of them, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, the ones we talked about on Friday.
If Breece is locked in as your 1-1, is there any one of those wide receivers that challenge that? If not, how deep are you going at wide receiver before you're willing to pivot to a different position in your rookie drafts?
Yeah, so for me, I kept my top 5 kind of locked from that day one. Jahan Dotson, I moved him up probably higher than I had going in, but he's still at 10 for me. There was people that went on day 2 I like better. But Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Treylon Burks, Chris Olave, Breece Hall, and Kenneth Walker are all guys that I'm taking before I go to a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm the same. I actually didn't move any of, I moved Calvin Austin down. Rest in peace, because that sucks. But I should say
he's going to be the best punt returner the Steelers have ever had, according to NFL Radio this morning.
A lot of kids are going to be very happy in a couple years, because I made a charity bet with my good friend Ray Garvin that he could have at least 2 top 36 wide receiver seasons for fantasy. Don't look like that's going to happen now unless something drastic happens with the Steelers. So my top guys were Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, George Pickens, Chris Olave, David Bell, Jahan Dotson, Alec Pierce, Skymore, Christian Watson. Feel pretty damn good about my top guys because all of those guys went early. So I'm not moving any of them. There's really no reason to. They all got good draft capital, all, in my opinion, decent landing spots. When we talked a little bit about on Friday, the only landing spot I don't love is Jahan Dotson, because I think he's just too much like Terry McLaurin. And so I don't know, until, in my opinion, they get a better quarterback, I don't know how productive he's going to be, but he was already in my top 10, so I'm not going to move him out, and I'm not moving him up because I like some of the other landing spots more. And I am with you. Like, if I'm in a super flex draft, like I said, for me, Breece Hall is going 1. I would entertain London or Wilson at 1 if you really need it. If you're sitting there with like Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, and DeAndre Swift as your running backs, you're like, I really don't need Breece Hall. Cool, bro. Okay, you're right. Go do whatever you want. Take Drake London, Garrett Wilson. But I think for me, those are the only 2. Like, I love Treylon Burks. Still a little bit worried about what his future could be there in Tennessee. I love Chris Olave, but I think he's more of a wide receiver too. Jameson Williams, I think, is going to be really good in Detroit, but we don't know what we're going to get from him this year. And I don't know that he's going to be quite the absolute stud he was in Alabama and the Detroit offense, but I don't think that this hurts Amon-Ra St. Brown. So a lot of people saying that they do 2 completely different things. I think it's great for both of them because they got a field stretcher now for that offense. So London and Wilson are probably the 2 that I would debate taking over Breece Hall, but then the rest of them I'm taking there. For me, Alec Pierce is a guy that I'm willing to take bets on late. Goes to Indy. I think that's a great landing spot for him to be paired with Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman. I think the guy that's really going to rise up, there's 2 of them. So let's talk about those guys really quick before we maybe hit on some of our lower end guys. Christian Watson and Skymore. Because Christian Watson, the speedster, goes to Green Bay. Funny enough, gets all these comparisons to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who they just let go of. He's now there. And then obviously Skymore goes to Kansas City. Anytime you're paired with Patrick Mahomes, your stock jumps up. I know I saw someone talking today on Twitter that in their rookie draft, he went at 1-3. I like Skymore. I don't know what this offense is going to be. I think it's going to revolve around Travis Kelce. And I actually think for the first time in a long time, we may see Kansas City spread the ball out more often than we really have. I don't think I'm taking him before like 1-8, 1-9. Where do you kind of fall on those two guys?
Yeah, so Skymore for me, I have him as wide receiver 6 coming out of the draft. I like the Kansas City landing spot. I liked him going into the draft. I was really hyped. In my final mock, if you guys looked at that, I thought he would possibly go into the first round. I would have taken him over Dotson. I was hoping a Green Bay or Kansas City would get him. So I thought that ended up being perfect. However, you're right. I think it's that Kansas City effect, which we talked about. We've seen too much with a CEH. You just get locked into these darling spots. To me, once you get past the 7 that I named, it's Skymore, George Pickens, Christian Watson, Pickett, depending on how you feel. And then, probably like a James Cook, maybe to complete that first round, or Corral, depending on how you feel about quarterbacks. But that's it for me. Like 1-8 or 1-9, I'd be excited to get him. I have Pickens at 7. I thought that was a good landing spot with the Steelers. And then Watson, you can't ignore. I mean, the Packers not only traded up to get him, he went at the top of the second round. I'm just not incredibly so. I think there was a lot of people right away that are like, well, that's the guy that's going to be Devontae Adams. He's not. He's not going to be Devontae Adams. And you really shouldn't put that on any of these guys that they're going to be your savior. But I think late first round, top of the second round, that's probably where these depth receiver, to me, you're going to go through probably 14 or 15 by the time you end the first 2 rounds, just because that feels like a more sure and safe bet than these other positions. Aside from a couple at the top of each of these positions, you're probably not thrilled about taking any of those later running backs or tight ends or quarterbacks high in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, even Romeo Doubs, who the Packers took as well, I believe in the 4th or 5th round, another guy to pair on the outside. I mean, I had him as wide receiver 18. I don't love him, but I like the landing spot. I do think that, Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, he can turn those guys into better than what they are. Like, just looking at my list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I actually probably would take him 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's easily like 15 wide receivers I'm willing to take a bet on late in draft. So I'm with you there.
So it'd be interesting too. It's how the flow of these drafts are going to go. I came out with a pretty clear picture of what I thought values were. And it's been amazing. I was going to read this actual first round. So we started one yesterday. It's a super flex first round. Hall and Walker went 1 and 2, which isn't that surprising because a lot of times teams at the top need running backs. And that was kind of a pretty quick tier. Then Drake London went 3. Then I said James Cook went at 4, Trey McBride at 5. So I ended up getting Garrett Wilson at pick 6, and I thought that's never going to happen again. I started another rookie draft this morning, also got Garrett Wilson at 6, which I know you and I still have him as wide receiver 1. It's been fascinating to see kind of where the values are going. Then Kenny Pickett went at 7, and this Treylon Burks went at 8. I had pick 9. I took Jameson Williams, and then Christian Watson finished the first round. So some of the it really depends. I've seen James Cook now go in the top 5 picks in all 3 of the rookie drafts I've started. And I think it speaks to both the hype for him as a player and the desperation at running back right now.
Yeah, James Cook, who we skipped over, I'm not taking in the first round. I'm sorry. I'm just not doing it. I said it on Twitter. I don't retract my statement. He's this year's CEH. Really good receiving back, and I think we're propping him up because he's going to a very, very good offense. If you go look back to the last couple of years where Josh Allen was a starter, they average a year 55 passes to running backs. That's not going to do it for you. in a PPR league. That's just not. Devin Singletary's not going anywhere, and I just don't see James Cook as a guy who can handle 200 rushes. He's just not. Like, maybe he gets 130 rushes in receiving work. Great. Then, yeah, maybe he's going to be something much like we mentioned with, I can't remember who the other running back was we were just talking about, Tyrion Davis-Price. Much like Tyrion Davis-Price, he's just a guy I'm willing to miss on. I don't think that it's there. I'm not taking him that early. A couple wide receivers that I mentioned Alec Pierce, who I was really high on. I believe Dennis was as well. He came in as my wide receiver 9 coming into the process. I would definitely take him there, and I think he's a guy who's going to fall. John Mechie going to the Texans, I thought great landing spot. A guy I think is getting a little bit underrated due to the late injury. They really don't have anybody there besides Brandon Cooks. I like Nico Collins, but I think Mechie could be better. Mechie's a guy that I'm willing to bet on late. And David Bell getting sent to the Cleveland Browns. They're already saying that they're likely going to have him in the slot. I think he's the new Jarvis Landry, and he's being paired with Deshaun Watson, not Baker Mayfield. I am all in on David Bell if I can get him late in the second. I mentioned Calvin Austin earlier. He's a guy I'll still probably take at the end of the third, early fourth. But I think until Claypool moves on, and then maybe they move Deontay to the outside with George Pickens. And if Calvin Austin's not in the slot, he doesn't stand any chance to do anything. But you did mention George Pickens. I just wanted to touch on, because I'm with you. He's, in my opinion, has a chance to be the best wide receiver in this class. Pittsburgh was the perfect spot for him because we've seen Mike Tomlin be able to kind of rein these guys in, and the only reason Pickens fell was because of the off-the-field stuff. If he can really kind of hone in and get Pickens to stay focused to everything on the field, Pickens could be an absolute steal, and I'm curious. I would bet he's probably going to end up going end of first, early second in most drafts. He's a guy that 100% be willing to take in that spot.
Yeah, I'm actually, as you said that, my pick just came up at 112 and Skymore just went. So I was looking at Pickens or Christian Watson. And I think that's probably where I'm going to go too.
And how brutal is this? Just thinking about this, Chase Claypool was the one who had to announce that pick, and George Pickens is probably going to be the guy that replaces him. Like that, I saw that happening. I was like, that's messed up, man. That they did that on purpose. Do you have any wide receivers you want to mention really quick before we get out of here?
I actually didn't mind the Khalil Shakir landing spot if you're looking for a later landing in Buffalo. Jamison Crowder's only there on a 1-year deal. We've seen Gabe Davis was a 4th-round pick who's kind of worked himself up into a good position. I think they're a high-volume passing offense. I don't think Isaiah McKenzie is ever going to be a huge factor on offense. I think that was a special teams kind of gadget player signing. So I think there's some opportunity there. So that was kind of interesting. I'm curious how you feel about I liked Jalen Tolbert too. I was going to
mention him. I forgot about that. But yeah.
I'm curious how you feel about Wandel Robinson. I know we were on the live show. If you're watching us, we were all a little blown away where that went, not only the position in the second round, but also to the Giants. I have subsequently seen him going early to mid second round in rookie drafts as well. I still have him as like wide receiver 15, and it's only that high because of the draft capital.
So I had him wide receiver 15 coming into the draft, and I'm not going to move him because he did get good draft capital. But it goes to, if you weren't watching us live day 2, we talked about when the pick happens. Like, the Giants were having such a good draft, and then they go and do this. I guess if they're wanting him to be the replacement for Kadarius Toney, if they're going to move on from him, then great. I don't understand the fit here.
They didn't even do anything with Kadarius Toney. So
yeah, I don't understand the fit. I just don't get it. Like, I'm trying to think of who he could even be from, Dayball's offense in Buffalo, and nothing's coming to mind.
Well, Isaiah McKenzie.
But Isaiah McKenzie was nothing. So that's like, I'm like,
well, he was a good returner, and they used him in that kind of gadget role. He always had like 1 or 2 surprise games this season where if you would have played him, you would have gotten decent points. He would have been a flex player. But that was my instant thought, is he's kind of that smaller gadget player. You're going to use him on reverses. Because you're not running a reverse with Kenny Golladay.
No.
Or if Sterling Shepard, you'd probably pull a hamstring halfway through.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that part of it also goes into I just don't think the Giants are going to be a good team this year. I really think they're moving on from Daniel Jones, so I think this is kind of a rebuild year. And then moving forward, like just assuming they're one of the worst teams in the league next year, and say they get a top quarterback in Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, are they really rebuilding this team around Wandel? Because Saquon's probably gone. Like, I did not think it was a good pick at the time. I thought he would at best be like a 4th rounder. Very surprised he went as early as he did and to the Giants. So
still not the most surprising wide receiver in the second round.
No, it was not. Tyquan Thornton would be that, and that was a very interesting pick as well. So I'm out on him. I think he's likely going to go way before I'm willing to take him at that point. I'd rather take a guy like Calvin Austin, who, again, I think is going to a better team, and I can get 2 rounds later in rookie drafts and hope for the best there. So I'm out on Mr. Wandale.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It's just been amusing kind of seeing all the people getting sucked back in.
Yeah. All right, so that will do it for us today. We'll be back Friday. Hopefully, Dennis will be able to join us in person. Maybe we'll do some rookie drafts and discuss that. No real plan of action at the moment. But everybody enjoy the next couple days. We've got Moon Knight finale on Wednesday. Doctor Strange comes out this weekend as well. I know. I can't wait.
Hope you're going, because
I am going Sunday because one of my friends. So I know that a scene got leaked, and I have not seen it.
No, I've pretty much just said F it to social media right now. I'm so busy anyway.
All I know is that my friend, we talk every morning as we're like doing stuff for work, and he was mentioning to me because he unfortunately saw part of it, and he said, "Don't watch it. Something major will be ruined for you."
You really need to stay off starting tonight because all the press screenings are tonight.
Yeah.
Like I've seen our friend Ricky's there right now and some other people. I'm like, well, I'm not going to be looking at anyone's posts because a lot of the embargo for reviews ends tonight too. So you're just going to have
I don't look at any of that stuff until after the fact. And anytime I see like, even if it's, I could be looking at something like, do you need a doctor? And as soon as I see, nope, I just scroll up. I don't even take.
So I guess I know, maybe on Monday we'll have mock draft Monday again, and then we'll be able to,
definitely.
Talk about the Doctor Strange, which is Dennis's favorite part. Really is when we do Marvel Cinematic Universe corner, because there's no bigger Marvel stan than Dennis Bennett.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I probably won't be able to watch Moon Knight until Friday night, but I got to find time to do that because I have like not been able to like sit down and like take a breath on the weekend, and it's not happening again this weekend. But it's God bless my wife willing to go on Mother's Day to go see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So I'm having
my wife's going with me on Friday night, so I'm looking forward to that because I have another Circle Around the Sun on Wednesday, so it's my birthday weekend movie.
Oh, there you go. Well, happy early birthday. We'll remind you of that again later. All right, so yeah, we will definitely talk about that on Monday. So everybody have a good day, and we will talk to you guys again on Friday.